always fun to do pinball. I haven't done pinball in a long time, so it's fun to get back. I serendipitously found this show last year and walked into David's talk. And it was just nice to see a little bit of pinball resurgence, because I think it's sort of a little bit lost lost art compared to where it's been before. Give you just a little bit of a background on my history. I grew up playing pinball in the 70s. I used to spend lots and lots of quarters at the University of Connecticut arcade thing, which was all pinballs, right? That was before video games really happened. And my mom would always get mad at me for wasting all my money on pinball, as moms are supposed to do. And then when I was in college, I was doing music and technology, which was a fun combination, but I bumped into Chris Granner, who was at the time working at Williams. And he was working with Bill Parad on doing pinball machines, and I just thought that was probably the coolest job anybody could ever have, is writing music and sound effects for pinball machines. Well, a little bit before I finished my master's, Bill Parad comes up to me and he says, looks like we're expanding from 2 to 3 people. Are you interested in doing an interview? And I was like, hell yeah. So I went down there. I interviewed Ed Sahaki, who was in charge of software development, and Chris Granner, who I of course had known. And then after my interview, where they asked about programming, do you know assembly language? And I said, sure, even though I hadn't really done any. And after the interview was over, they took me to a room where there was an unreleased F-14 Tomcat. And they asked me if I wanted to play it. And I thought that was I was in this pinball factory after having played pinball my whole life, and I thought it was just really amazing. So I went in and I played against him, and I'd been playing my whole life, and I'm pretty good. So I certainly did quite well and had fun on the F-14 Tomcat. Well, later I got the job, and I'm chatting with Ed Sahaki over, pretty recently after I'm there, and he's like, yeah, there were a couple guys who kind of had, good background, but the other guy just didn't know pinball. And the fact that you were a really good pinball player and could talk about pinball machines, and the fact that you liked high speed and 8-ball deluxe and these things, that kind of was one of the things that was the reason we wanted to hire you. So I called my mom and told her that all that time she spent saying that I shouldn't be playing pinball all that time, in fact, I was actually really preparing for my job. So that was a rather satisfying phone call for someone to be able to have with one of their parents. So I was at Williams from '87 to '89, brought in as a programmer and composer and sound designer. Back then you had to write code as well as write music, as Dave Thiel can well attest to. There for a couple years. After that I went freelance, which pretty much meant I stopped doing things for Williams and I started doing pinballs machines for Data East and Sega. And I did almost all their games, or maybe all their games, from 1989 to 1998. So from Back to the Future through Lost in Space, I think, inclusive. And then in 1998 I got a call from Microsoft saying they're looking for somebody to do audio technology. And I figured, what the heck? David went off to Seattle, I can go to Seattle too. Sounds fun. So I was there for about 10 years, where I started in Windows, but then pretty much when Xbox started up, back when it was about 35 people, I moved over to the Xbox team, doing the audio technology there, and Xbox 360, and I left about a year and a half ago. And I'm sort of back now to doing freelance like I was during my Data East time. I'm not doing any pinball machines. I'm actually working with some of the old guys. I'm working with Lauren Bromley, doing a game with Larry DeMar, mostly video slots and things like that. So no pinball. Sadly, there aren't 3 or 4 pinball companies anymore, just the one. So these are a few games I've done. I think I've probably done about 50 pinball machines, ranging from the very, very first game I did any work on was Fire, which I saw out there. I did Black Knight 2000, Banzai Run, Apollo 13, Batman, Batman Returns, Guns N' Roses. So again, most of those, when there were like 2 or 3, or at one point even 4 pinball companies, this is kind of the time that there was lots and lots of pinball work and lots of games being made. And it was a really exciting time in the pinball industry. So why do we have sound in pinball? I was very pleased to hear Gary say that there's no point in playing pinball with no sound, and it's much more fun with sounds up. Sort of a corollary to that is it's sometimes much more fun to enjoy a pinball machine in your own house as opposed to an arcade where the volume may be turned down or it's competing with Dance Dance Revolution across the way. But there are a few main things that, at least when I was doing pins and designing sounds for pins, that I would keep in mind. One of the most obvious is let the player know they did something, right? You hear the jackpot sound, you know that you've gotten the jackpot. We were just talking about Apollo 13 in the other room. And 13-ball multi-ball is a little bit hectic. It's a little bit crazy to figure out what's going on. There's lots of times where hearing the jackpot sound is the reason I know I got jackpot on that game. Or other games as well. If you're in multi-ball, it's hard to keep track of everything. So let the player know that they've done something. When you hear ding, 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 it's extra ball time and things like that. Another thing is to let the player know they're supposed to do something. When you hear a game say, extra ball is lit, you know it's probably a good idea to divert your attention to get in the extra ball. In the case of music, a lot of times the music will change when something particular happens. You need to do something different than what you were doing before, so sound will help you do that as well. This is true for all games, but certainly for licensed games especially, and that's just to bring the player into the game and make them feel like they're having a little bit of a Twilight Zone experience or a Black Knight experience or a Baywatch experience, I guess. Make them, for licensed games, again, the themes will be reminders of the music, maybe from the movie, or the voices will remind them of the characters. Or in the case of original games, you've played this game before, you recognize it, and it just really brings you and sucks you in, for those 3 minutes or 4 minutes that you're playing. Of course, this crowd probably is 20 or 30 minutes, but usually 3 or 4. This was one of Joe Kamenko's big things. Everybody who Joe Kamenko is? He was the senior designer at Data East for the whole period I was there. One of the founders of Data East, in fact. And he really liked the fact that from the moment you put a quarter in, he wants your adrenaline to start pumping. And music can really do a good job of that, even if the ball's moving kind of slow or there's a little bit of a lull in the gameplay. The music can be kind of driving you over these few minutes and really keeping you excited about the game. So that's certainly one of the reasons we have sound in games. This is sort of a unique thing in games, in arcade games especially, and one of the big things you want to do is get the attention of other people. Right? When you're playing a game and you hear a big super jackpot being screamed at the top of their lungs, that can really get your attention and have people come over here. Slot machines obviously use that a lot too, as well as the knocker sound. Right? That's something that really gets people to know what's going on. And let them know it's a cool game, that it's a fun thing to play. So those are the things that we would always keep in mind when we were doing and putting together sound packages for some of these games. So this is as technography as it gets. But this is kind of the structure of when we would lay out music for a pinball machine, what we would generally keep in mind. There's the main play sequence, which is remarkably unchanged over the last 20 years or so, or was remarkably constant during those periods I was doing it, although they would expand and get more complicated. And that was the notion of, if you got main play, which is basic single ball play, at some point, and you'd have music for that obviously, a particular theme that you write for it. At some point, every game has multi-ball. I don't know of a game that hasn't had multi-ball in as long as I can remember. And we always believed that was a big enough change in what you're supposed to do for the game that it warranted its own music. Now that goes back to letting the player know what they're supposed to do. When multi-ball ready music starts, aside from the voice that says multi-ball ready, you know the music's changed and that helps you. The main other one obviously is multi-ball music, which is more frenetic and crazy action. And then music if you get jackpot. Now it was very interesting that I saw a big change in from when I started back in '87. I think it occurred in around 90 or 91, is we kind of saw an explosion in the rules of pinball, an explosion in these little mini sub-tasks you're supposed to do in them. It used to be pretty straightforward. Single ball, go to multi-ball, get the jackpot. If you think back to High Speed or games like that, that was pretty much the rules. Well, we started getting more complicated in terms of, well, even though you're going for multi-ball, I'm going to start up this little sub-rule where maybe forget about going for multi-ball for a minute, but see how many ramps in a row you can get. Or see how many of these targets you can knock down in a certain period of time. We used to call those modes. We called them, you know, moon mode or lapse mode, or again, these little games where all of a sudden the game stops and you're supposed to get as many shots in the rocket as you possibly can. I was at Data East at the time, and Joe naturally wanted separate pieces of music for each of these. So the first couple of games that did this, there were maybe a couple of sub-modes that you would get. And then I think by the end of when I was doing them, there were some of these games that had like 15 or 18. I mean, Jurassic Park, I think, has 12 different, you know, electric fence mode and stampede mode and tour the park mode and system failure mode, all these different things. And so for musically, what we do with that is we basically diverge temporarily from our main track. For the duration of this mode, you go into this music. And then when that mode's almost done, we go back to the other one. And usually these modes were things that would start slow and get faster and faster and faster and faster. And we could control that programmatically. So you could do that. And so the player would be aware that time's almost up and you better hurry up and get that ramp. And then, of course, you go back to the main sequence wherever you were. So that's kind of the basic structure of where we do it. It was also very fun with licensed games. For example, we did the Tommy pinball machine. And the way we did that was we had our basic themes for, you know, main play, multi-ball ready, multi-ball, jackpot. I think that one had super jackpot, and I may have had super duper jackpot or super duper 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 jackpot. And for that one, we actually chose individual songs from Tommy to represent the different modes, and that matched very well with the modes that were in the game as well. So there's Holiday Camp mode where we play Holiday Camp music. There's Acid Queen mode where we play Acid Queen music, and so on. So that sometimes the themes can tie in very, very well. So to put things in a little bit of perspective as to what life was like back when I started at Williams, when I first got to Williams, they were just finishing a game. I forgot which one it was, but they were actually using the old VAX mini micro mainframe for that. This predates the PC. I think the Seattle public school system is still using a VAX. I think that's one of the big problems that they have now. But I mean, that's a big honking timeshare machine like you'd have at a university 25, 30 years ago. And they had just ordered us these brand new compact 286 computers with 640K bytes of memory and a 20 megabyte hard drive. Floppy disk is what we use for the most of part. And it had this fancy graphics card they spent a lot of money on called Hercules Graphics, which let you draw, you know, lines. Basically. So that was a while ago, and that's sort of what the technology was like back when we were doing these games, and that really kind of sets the stage for what we're going to talk about in a bit. Here's a quick trivia question. What's the first Williams game to use the 2151 sound chip? Let's see how well you know your pinball history. Nobody. I thought for sure. Not even David. David must know. Nope. It was Road Kings. Road Kings was the first pinball system to go from the System 11 sounds, which was the classic Defender, Robotron type sounds, to the new Yamaha soundboard where you could actually make real music. So if you didn't know that one, you probably don't know what the first console game, or the first arcade game to use it was, which predated it by a little bit.
Yeah, I do. It's an Atari game.
It's an Atari game, yes.
Marble Madness.
Marble Madness, that's right. So this was right around 86, 85, 86, 87, which is pretty soon after this the FM technology had been invented. And that became really the arcade and pinball sound for the better part of a decade. So that chip had a really tremendous influence on pinball music for a long time. And here's some geeky stuff about it. This is what the old Williams soundboard looked like. So it was that Yamaha sound chip, which could play 8 simultaneous notes, which was a lot at the time. We had a dedicated microprocessor that just ran sound. There was a DAC, which basically meant something that could play back like a digitized sound effect. We used it mostly for drums, though. And we also had all of the old System 11 sounds, which are the classic Defender type sounds. And the super high fidelity CVST speech chip, which is where all the speech came from. So it kind of was this combination of the old system and the new system. And that's it up there. So that's what we were faced with working with. Oops. So some of the challenges, and I feel a little bit like a buggy whip maker when I talk about this stuff, because nobody really has to worry about most of this stuff as much as they used to anymore. But these are the challenges that we had, and they really had a big impact on how we would make music for the games. The biggest was memory. Back in 1987, 32 kilobytes was a lot of memory. Right, these days, right, I got a flash drive, I get it for free at a conference, you know, for like 4 gigabytes. Well, 32 kilobytes was a lot back then. And so we saved memory however we could. There's lots of things we had to do. We only had a certain number of voices we could play. You had to write your music with only about 6 or 7 voices, so you could have some sound effects as well. And if we wanted to do something interesting, we generally had to write new computer code to go do it. And David's nodding back there, yeah. Because if you want something cool to happen, you don't have these big fancy computer workstations that let you do music for pinball machines. You just have to write some code to do it. And the development environment was pretty limited as well. When we would make a change to a pinball, to the pinball sound, we'd have to burn an EEPROM, which would be about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Then we'd have to walk it down to the programmer's office and hope he wasn't using the game and plug it in. And so it really was a long time from when you'd make a change on something to when you'd actually be able to hear it in the game. And so the iteration and turnaround was pretty tough. So the development tools were pretty rudimentary back then. Here's another quiz question. Who is the programmer for Banzai Run?
Larry DeMar.
Larry DeMar, yes. I didn't have to give you the hint that he co-developed Defender. So Larry co-designed Banzai Run with Pat Lawler. He was also the main programmer of it. And so this is some of the Banzai Run. By the way, the classic bonsai screen. And that's what I was talking about when I said something to make people's 4 games across the arcade turn their head. You know, a bunch of explosions, somebody yelling bonsai, crazy maniac, and then some nice frenetic music that says, yeah, I won the jackpot. Think about all the notes that are being played here. Now, one thing about the old school is that, remember, these aren't recordings. We don't go into a studio and record things. We actually have little lists of instructions to tell the synthesizer when to play what note. And every single note in these cases, and I have an example later on, actually has to be typed in by hand. And that's the most efficient way to do it. MIDI really hadn't taken off so much quite yet, and MIDI's not very efficient anyway. So there's long, long lists of text files that drive all this stuff. So that was one way we saved memory, is by doing that stuff. There's another way, and I want you to listen closely to the beginning, to this little bit. Listen especially to the speech.
Welcome, race fans, to Bonsai Run! He's going after Red Hot and Bluebeard.
Okay. So we had the welcome race fans to Bonsai Run, and we're going after Red Hot and Bluebeard. Let's listen to that little part a little more carefully.
Red Hot and Bluebeard.
So there's Red Hot and Bluebeard.
Red Hot and Bluebeard.
Now let's listen just to a little bit of the other beginning.
Fans to Bonsai. Fans to Bonsai.
We had a small problem when we were doing this game. Well, not a problem. We had pretty much finished the game. The speech ROMs were completely filled up, meaning there was absolutely no way to get any more speech in the game. And we had, so we recorded all the player names and all the bonsai and the welcome race fans and that stuff. But Larry came up with kind of a cool idea. He's like, when you hit the 3 targets for Red Hot, it would say, he's challenged Red Hot. And when you then hit the blue targets for Bluebeard, the game would say, he's challenged Bluebeard. And as Larry was playing the game, he was noticing that the game was saying, he's challenged Red Hot, he's challenged Bluebeard, if he got them right in a row. And he said, that really doesn't sound very natural. What I really want to say is, he's challenged Red Hot and Bluebeard for the case where somebody hits the red targets and then finishes the blue targets before the voice has finished saying, he's challenged Red Hot. Can you make it go, he's challenged Red Hot and Bluebeard? And I'm like, there's literally no room at all in the ROMs for the word and. If we could record it, we couldn't put it in the game because there's no room. So what we did was a little bit clever, and these are the kind of things that again, this is sort of old school buggy whip manufacturing knowledge. The way speech is stored, it's just computer memory that we have here. And so that little rectangle up there is a representation of this computer memory. The first bit of computer memory says, welcome race fans to Bonsai Run. Then there's some other speech as well. Well, if you look at that phrase, the word fans is in there. So, using some tricks, I could just play the word fans instead of the whole welcome race fans to Bonsai Run phrase. Well, then we got thinking, well, within the word fans is the sound and, which sounds sort of like the word and, if you do it fast and aren't too clever about it, don't think about it too much. So what we actually do in the game is if you hit Red Hot and Bluebeard before the speech is finished saying, we'll say he's challenged Red Hot, the little middle bit of the word and from fans and Bonsai Run, and then Bluebeard. And that gives the illusion that we had actually recorded the word and, when in fact we didn't. So let's listen to that once again.
Welcome, race fans, to Bonsai Run! He's going after Red Hot and Bluebeard.
So that was our solution to the missing and in Red Hot and Bluebeard. And again, this was because Larry decided he thought it would sound more natural to do that, and there was no room left at the end for speech. So I want to talk about one of my favorite games, which lamentably I don't have. That's Black Knight 2000. This game was a lot of fun. It was a very collaborative effort that lots of good people worked on. Does anybody know who the programmer was?
Ed Boon.
Ed Boon, who actually after this game was in the genesis of creating this notion of a video game called Mortal Kombat. That was his last pin game. From then, he's been video games the whole way. But working with him was incredible. And we had some old school challenges there as well. One thing I mentioned that we have to type in all of these notes. You know, we don't, or at least I don't, record at the keyboard. I actually use a different kind of storage media for my music and a different kind of input device than they do. And I was actually write the music out in longhand. And I actually had a undo feature as well that I could use. So it was a pretty sophisticated system. And I would actually write the music out in longhand and then sort of just transcribe it in. You get pretty good at that after a while. And this is actually I don't know if you can see it. Maybe I wasn't supposed to take this with me when I left Williams, but I didn't mean to. This is actually some of the original manuscript from Black Knight 2000, the main theme. And if you look, you probably can't see it. It says Steve's theme. So, like I said, Black Knight 2000 was a very collaborative effort. Steve Ritchie had some good ideas for some of the main songs and things he wanted to do. Dan Forden ended up writing just a really killer multi-ball ready music. And so it was my job kind of to put it all together and orchestrate it and work with Ed to get it into the game. There are a couple other challenges too, and I want you to listen to the vocals in this particular case. This is Black Knight 2000. So you can see the music can actually read along. So, a couple things. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks.
We were just talking about you. So remember I was talking about trying to save memory. I don't know if you noticed, but there was this particular note that what do you used to call them? The Choir of Angels sang, and it got reused a lot. We actually kind of wrote the music knowing that we were going to be able to have this one chord that would fit in lots of different places. And so it's actually the exact same vocal recording. We just play it over and over again. And there are a couple other things as well. If you listen in a similar long line, we didn't record "you got the power, you got the might." We recorded a "you got the," and then a "power" and a "might." So where did my cursor go?
You got the power. You got the might.
No way.
Get ready for battle.
Give me your money.
Beat the Black Knight.
So it's these kind of tricks and techniques that we would use to try and make it seem like we were doing a lot more work than we really were. There were actually a bunch of other technical challenges for this particular game. There was no way at the time for the pinball system to be able to sing. The soundboard that did the Yamaha and drums was on one computer and the voices were on another one. We were told by the hardware engineers, no, they really can't do that. And then Ed Boon pulled some magic wizardry out of his hat and managed to make a way where this game could actually sing in time with the music. So, so that we thought that was pretty cool. There must be a Black Knight 2000 out there somewhere. Is there a Black Knight 2000 in the, oh, there isn't. Oh, what? Oh, no. That's a travesty. Well, if you play it on PinMame or get one live, Black Knight 2000 actually had a whole lot of very, very sort of unique, it had built on a lot of the techniques that Chris Granner and Bill Parad had built up over the years in terms of interactive music, which is how do you make music change without it being awkward, changing in the right place. And there's lots and lots of cool things in terms of the beat never stops from the moment you put the quarter in. At some cases, the game waits for the music to get to the end of a measure before it does some display thing. Even the kicking out of the ball to the plunger is in beat with the music. And that's all a combination of the software that like Chris and Bill and I wrote, and Ed Boon getting the programming really, really well. So they're sound effects that are transposed to the music. And it's kind of funny because about 7 years or 8 years after this, Microsoft made a big deal with their announcement of direct music technology, which was for interactive music, and about how it could do things like pinball machines had been doing since the mid-'80s. So I thought that was funny. Another game that I thought that I actually had a really good time working on, which I'll just play a little bit, because people ask me like sometimes what's sort of the game you like the music on yourself the most, and I usually have to preface that by, you mean after Black Knight? And probably Swords of Fury was one of those. Just because I think I was going through an Emerson, Lake and Palmer phase or a Alan Parsons phase. And so this is the multi-ball music from Swords of Fury.
Lion Man defeats the Balrog.
That's that. So I had a lot of fun on that game, and again, it was very ELP inspired. I think that was the mid '80s, right? So, the last Williams game I wanted to talk about actually is a video game because I was told by Jerry that you actually had a NARC here, and I got very, very fortunate that one of the guys in the band the Pixies, for some reason, really liked the game, and ended up recording it as and releasing it on one of their. At the time, it was an album, I think. So I thought it'd be fun to play a little bit of the original juxtaposed with the Pixies cover of the NARC theme. This game was done, this was Eugene Jarvis, George Petro, of course, whole swack of other characters, using a variation of the pinball soundboard that was a little bit more sophisticated. I thought it kind of ironic that Narc sitting next to a Ms. Pac-Man. It's about the antithesis of Ms. Pac-Man, I think. So after Narc, like I said, I went freelance and ended up doing the next decade or so of games for Data East. The first one was Back to the Future. That's a little bit different sound system. This one, my guess is that Dave Thiel probably designed most of the sound system for that, which was, I like to think of it as the Williams system, but a couple notches better. It had that same Yamaha chip that was very, very popular. It had a speech chip which was vastly superior to the old Williams pinball chip, sound chip. And it was stereo instead of mono, which you don't think that would make a big difference, but it really can make a really big difference. And overall, it had a better speaker system. So at Data East, one of the big things that also started to happen was return back to the 70s, where we started to work on a lot of licensed games. We did some non-licensed games like Checkpoint and so on, but most of them were licensed. And one of the most fun things about doing licensed games is doing some of the dialogue. James Doohan.
There's no intelligent life down there.
James Doohan was really, really fun to work with. He was, like I say here, sometimes it's really, really great fun working with these people. James Doohan, we had the script, we flew to LA and met him down there. Sometimes people are like looking at their watch, is this thing over yet? James Doohan went through the script. After we were done and ready to go, he was like, there are things people ask me to say when they see me on the street. Let's make sure we get some of those. And we spent the next half hour writing more script, and another 45 minutes after that recording it, and then he invited us to dinner with his wife afterwards. So he was a really, really class act. Bill Paxton was really, really nice too. This is a little bit of a recording session we did down on the set of Twister. We flew down to Ponca City, Oklahoma, where he threw the football around with us and joked with us, and I had a good time. So here's a little bit of what the session was like with him.
Extra ball! Extra ball is lit! Shoot again! Extra ball! Extra ball is lit! Extra ball is lit! Shoot again! Blown away! Replay! Jackpot! Double jackpot! Triple jackpot! Super jackpot! Double jackpot. Triple jackpot. Super jackpot. Double jackpot ready. Double jackpot ready. Triple jackpot ready. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh man, you lost your double jackpot. Dude, you lost your triple jackpot. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh man, you lost your double jackpot. Dude, you lost your triple jackpot. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh man, you lost your double jackpot. Chase multi-ball. Multi-ball.
Wow.
The storm, check it out.
Everybody underground now!
Debris. We have debris. We have damage. This is it. This is it. The big one. Eat the big one. All right. 2 balls locked. We got multi-cock ready. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Woo!
That's 1. 2 balls locked. Multi-ball ready.
So that goes on, but sometimes people really got pinball, and sometimes they didn't, and so we had to sort of let them know pinball is generally a pretty over-the-top kind of thing, and if you think you're not way overdoing it, you're probably not doing it enough. As I said, a lot of times people were really great to work with, and sometimes they weren't, and we'll just leave it at that. So why is Oprah appearing in a pinball slide? Actually, it was through Oprah and some connections my wife had actually at Oprah that made it possible for us to record some of the speech for Apollo 13. Around the time the movie came out, the cast of Apollo 13 was on the Oprah show. My wife's good friend was an intern there at the time, and we arranged to have this recording session with Gary Sinise, Kevin Bacon, I think Bill Paxton again, backstage right after they did the Oprah show. So again, it's one of the interesting things about working on licensed games is you just end up in these weird places, weird situations. If anyone had said, do you think you will be backstage at the Oprah show recording Gary Sinise, I probably would have said, no, I don't think so. Another interesting thing about doing licensed games is that sometimes the timing is tough. Sometimes, especially if it's a new film, we might not have, the film might not be done by the time we needed the game to get done. Sometimes this meant that we would just have to make up our own music. And sometimes it means you get certain little details wrong. Has anybody here played Jurassic Park? Jurassic Park is sort of narrated by a James Earl Jones kind of voice. And people are like, well, why is that? That has nothing to do with the game. Well, there is a scene in Jurassic Park, the movie, where I think they're riding around in that little Jeep that drives them around the park, and they're like, oh, we spared no expense, we got blah, blah, blah to do the voice. In the original script, which we saw, it said, we'll get, money was no object, we're getting James Earl Jones to do the voice. Well, by the time the movie comes out, apparently they had switched James Earl Jones to this other person, except that we had already recorded the voices and the game was already out. So that's why James Earl Jones is narrating Jurassic Park, even though he has nothing to do at all with Jurassic Park. So these sorts of things can kind of bite you a little bit. Licensed game speech also presents some interesting challenges. One of the things that we'll use is we'll go to the movies. If the movie's out, I've got lots of great recordings of movie dialogue that have been sent to me for existing movies, stripped of sound effects and music. And those are obviously great. Sometimes you can't get those and you have to search the movie for quiet spots where there's some interesting dialogue, and actually Star Wars has a lot of that. Sometimes we get custom speech by the actor or actress, and that's obviously ideal. Sometimes we don't, oops. And for that, we do what we call fretify. Anybody recognize Fred Young? Yes, I know Fred Young has given talks at various pinball things. Fred is quite a character. I worked with him on an awful lot of games. So here's a little bit of Fred in the middle of a recording session.
All right. And how's that? Now, did I do it better on the second take? Okay, that's what I thought. All right. Are we through with Leo now? Leo. All right. Yeah, and excitable, we're through the 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. Okay. All right. All right.
This is track 4, Rig.
All right, here we go. Lethal weapon. Jackpot. Jackpot. Double jackpot. Triple jackpot. Shoot again. Extra ball is lit. Special is lit. Shoot the extra ball. Go for the extra ball. 1 million. 2 million. 3 million.
So I once had like a 9-hour recording session with Fred, and his voice didn't give out. He's the voice on Checkpoint. When you actually hit the start button and it says, "All right, here we go, we rollin'." That was just an ad lib that he threw in, signifying that he knew that the tape machine was rolling, ready to record it. So I miss Fred. Fred was a good guy. Fred's a good guy. So FM was great for quite a while, but we did end up changing technologies. Williams went to DCS and Data East. Actually, first Data East went to what's called the BSMT 2000, which is a different technology that we use to generate sound. Does anybody know what the first pinball machine to use the BSMT 2000 was? And there is one out there. My wife spotted it. Nobody? Actually, Batman was the first pinball machine to use the BSMT 2000. It was not the first game of any kind, however, to use it. So, the first game of any kind to use it was an arcade machine called Ghost Town. So, right around 1991 or 92, I don't remember exactly when those games were. But that used a different kind of technology. The idea was to get a more realistic kind of sounding music than we were able to get with the old Yamaha FM chip. So we would record actual little bits of instruments, a little bit of guitar, a little bit of drums, a little bit of bass, and play them back just like a musical instrument synthesizer would. We could play 11 notes instead of just 8, which was cool. And it still used this sort of note list format that I was talking about before. So that was a fun project to do. I spent probably about 4 to 6 months designing the actual code for the chip and working with people to figure out manufacturing and distribution and all that good stuff. So this is an example of a little bit of a file that we would use to use the BSMT chip. And so this basically, this is a custom version of James Doohan's Star Trek machine. That was actually, we used to do that quite a bit. When somebody would do voice for us, we would give them a pinball machine and let them do some extra speech just for their version of the game. So down here, he says, "Beautiful shooting, Wendy. Nice shot, Thomas. Nice shot, Eric." Wendy is his wife, and his kids are Eric and Thomas. So in Scotty's pinball machine, it would go, "Nice shot, Wendy." So this just says these are the little waves that we use, and these are the ones that will go into the pinball ROMs itself. So this is an example of that old school note list I was talking about, where for every single note you want to be played, you have to write note E4 for 60 ticks, note B3 for 60 ticks, note F sharp 4 for 60 ticks, and so on. So David, can you read this and tell me what song this is? Oh, I put him on the spot. I'll give you a big hint.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra ball.
So, bum 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 ba da da dun dun da dun. That's how it goes. So think back to that Bonsai Run music with a lot of organ stuff. That was very, very tiring on the fingers. So this is the way music was done up through, I don't know when Sega or when Stern Pinball switched systems, but through quite a bit. There are pluses and minuses. I like it because there's lots of music you can get into it. You can store it, again, there's a game I did called Crew Ball that had about 25 minutes of music in 32K of memory, which is very much more than you can get using recorded stuff. It's more flexible and interactive. You can speed the music up or slow it down or transpose it up and down. Obviously, from music production-wise, it doesn't compare to what they do these days. But so I'll show you a little bit of how we would use those note lists to put together music. And this is from Guns N' Roses, obviously. So we would have little bits of Slash playing guitar and vocals that we would chop up into little bits.
Welcome to the jungle, whatever you may need. We got your disease in the jungle. We got fun and games.
So those are the types of sounds we would have. We also have some of this stuff. There's a bass guitar, cymbal. All I have to do is figure out how to time these things and you can make some music. Put all together, it sounds like this. All right, I don't have the off button unless I'm at the keyboard myself. So what we actually did for this game, it was fun because we went back to the recording studio where they recorded this and dug the old 2-inch master tapes out of the vault and just stripped all of the all the vocals off, all the instruments off, all the guitar parts off, and then kind of put this together like that. And what I really, really lament is once I had all that stuff, not thinking, well, I could make a cool video game where you could like play guitar and pretend to do it, because I had all the stuff sitting on my desk back in 1994 to do that, and I just didn't do it. There's obviously lots of dialogue you record, and sometimes you don't leave it all in, but this, we're pretty, okay, not too many kids here. Peyton, close your ears. This is one of my favorite lines that was done.
Fuck those other games. Come on over to this one.
So that was Slash. But so that was a lot of fun, and that shows the kind of things we could do with these note lists that it's tough to do otherwise. Here's a big trivia question. There's a song in Guns N' Roses that was never released except on the pinball machine. I don't think it ever was released after that. It's called Ain't Going Down, and we just found it. They did, like, got a third of the way through doing it, and they just gave up on it. And so if you search through Guns N' Roses pinball, which you can do with Virtual Pin MAME, search for Ain't Going Down. That's the only place you can hear that song. Another license game we did, or I did, wasn't a true pin, but was video pin. This was actually the first non-pinball game I had done, called Crew Ball, which was sort of licensed off Motley Crue, but not really. In the interest of time, I'll skip the music, but one of the reasons that Electronic Arts wanted to get me to do this game is because they had known I had done a lot of actual pins. They really wanted to play up the fact that real pinball game designers had worked on the game. So it's actually a pretty fun game, and I'm sure it's available for emulation somewhere. One of the fun things about doing games with Joe and the whole Sega Data East thing is that we got to work on some custom games, which were a lot of fun. I worked on a total of 4, well, maybe if you count Kong and Kabuki and a couple other ones, POW, but these are the big ones. Custom games for Aaron Spelling, Michael Jordan, Joel Silver, and Arnon Milchan. Joel Silver and Arnon Milchan are big Hollywood producer guys. And actually, just about a month ago, I saw this in People magazine. Somebody told me about it, and I went to go look it up. I don't read People magazine as a rule. But Candy Spelling is selling their house, and one of the things that she talks about is the Aaron Spelling pinball machine. And the quote was, "This is Aaron's favorite gift from me. I helped design it." What they did for that game, Candy Spelling, Aaron Spelling's wife, called up Data East or Joe Kamenko, I'm not sure which it was, with the notion of, hey, I really want a special birthday present for my husband. You know, you've done some games that based on his TV shows. Can you do one just for him? And Joe came to us and talked about it, and we were like, kind of busy and we're crammed. And so the tack we took was, well, let's just quote such a high number, there's no way she'll say yes. I think Joe did that, and she said, sure, let me write the check. Next thing we knew, we were on a plane down to her house, her 88,000 or 76,000 square foot house, with the bowling alley and the gift wrapping room and the whole 9 yards, talking to her about pinball and what are the most special things in his life and who are the people we should get. A bit later, I received these audio tapes of Tori Spelling and Jimmy Stewart and Bruce Willis, you know, a who's who of Hollywood, recording things like, I love you, Daddy, which it says when, Tori says when he hits a target, or, you know, Jimmy Stewart saying, great shot there, Aaron. So that was really a very, very fun project to work on, and I'm really glad that we ended up doing that. We did a Joel Silver game, and for this one, for speech, they wanted to be a present for him, but they wanted his voice in it. Because he apparently has some things that he is notorious for saying, screaming at the top of his lungs at actors, you know, you'll never work in this town again, you'll be selling shoes, and they wanted it in the game. So what they did is at a party, they took a video camera around and got him to do some of his catchmark phrases on camera. Now, how people this smart in Hollywood can deliver an audio tape of such terrible quality, I'm not quite sure, but at least we got the speech. So this is Joel Silver's buddy, I forgot who it is, with the video camera trying to get Joel Silver to say some things that are going to go into the game.
Do it to the lens. Do it to the lens.
Wait, you're going to be selling shoes.
Come on, give me selling shoes.
Why have we got to do this now?
I love it. Do it.
You'll be selling shoes! Get out of here!
Go.
Where's Joel Silver? Where's Silver?
Get the producer.
Get Joel Silver. Or a producer.
Okay. Jackpot.
Jackpot. Jackpot.
Go for the bonus.
Go for the bonus.
So, again, that was kind of fun that we could get these things into the game that he didn't know about. And I never actually met him or saw the game, saw him get the game, but I'm told he liked it and was very surprised that his own voice was saying some of these things. So the final quiz question of the day is, how many games did I do with Joe Kamenko? And actually, I have no idea. I think it's around 60 or 70, but I lost count a long time ago. So I've got a couple parting thoughts. Pinball machines are, and again, I've worked since 1987 doing interactive audio for games pretty much my whole adult life. From Xbox to arcade games to PlayStation games and Nintendo games and designing the Xbox and so on. Pinballs are the most challenging in terms of interactive. I think they really they're one of the most interactive, quick turning, quick changing things and present big challenges for people like David and myself now. And although DCS and compression certainly gives you a lot better fidelity and a lot more high production value, I really miss the greater interactivity I think we had when we were sort of doing it old school with typing in the notes command by command and seeing what's going, doing it that way. I did learn a little sort of sad thing trying to get ready for this, and that is CDRs have a limited lifespan. A lot of I had planned to do some of the some other types of recording sessions like James Doohan's session and so on. And the CDRs that I burned as my archive backup copies were burned about 15 years ago. And that's about the lifetime of CDRs. And so in some cases, I don't have access to some of this stuff anymore, which is sort of a shame. The other, and I don't know if anybody here is associated with programming the M1 emulator, arcade game emulator. It would be really nice if you could type in the individual commands instead of just going next, 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 because there's a lot of cool interactive stuff in the pinball music you can get using that you can't. But I had a great time doing pinballs from '87 to '98, and again, it's a great industry. There's lots of great people who work in it, and it's just really been a blast. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Yes, way in the back.
What did they charge Candy for that spelling or for the spelling name?
The question was, what did they charge Candy Spelling for that pinball machine? The number that I read in People was $175,000, which strikes me as low.
Wow.
I heard that it also was conditional on Joe's wife getting a part in the research.
Oh, the rumor from the floor is the game was also conditional on Joe's wife at the time, Kim, getting a part in a television series. And actually, I think as part of that, I also got like a 4-second walk-on with no dialogue in some random made-for-TV movie. So that actually, I had forgotten about that. There was a little bit of helpful exchange going on there. All right, thank you very much. Oh, wait, sorry.
You might have already mentioned this in the beginning. I've always wondered, I missed the very beginning, do you have a background in rock music, or were you in bands or anything like that? Because I've noticed all of your original music has a really heavy sort of hard rock edge.
The question,
Screwball and stuff, obviously, also the licensed games.
Right. The question was, do I have a background in rock and roll? Because a lot of the music, it's been pointed out that I wrote tends to be pretty rock-driven, beat-driven. And the answer is, yeah, I've been playing bass guitar since I was 13 years old and been in rock bands pretty much the whole time up through even now. So
specifically the bass lines, I've always noticed were really prominent, and I always, believe it or not, I always wondered if you were a bassist, because I thought bass really sounds.
The comment was, gosh, yeah, your bass lines seem really prominent. Yeah, I would generally write things from the bass line up. So I'd come up with a line on the bass and then figure out something that I wanted to play on top of that, depending upon it. So, good ear, wow. Yes, Steve.
I would like to thank you very much for your great work on Black Knight 2000. The song would have been nothing without your bass line, and there were so many other very nice elements that you brought to it. It was a very, very powerful thing to work with you, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Steve. Steve Ritchie, the designer of Black Knight 2000 and writer and co-writer of some of the music of Black Knight 2000, was very kind in his comments on working with me in Black Knight 2000. Black Knight 2000 was one of the most fun games I ever worked on. That was a good time, and I think the passion that everybody had for that game shows in the final product. All right. Thank you very much.